2. Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, and I wanted to talk about a short story that I read recently, one that is about a specific woman at the end of her life. I am referring to Phyllis from the book The Bed Moved by Rebecca Schiff, and this was published in 2016. For those who don't know, Rebecca Schiff is an author who earned their MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop. I've cataloged a few writers here and there from the Iowa Writers Workshop. It seems to pump out a lot of short story writers in particular, which I find to be fascinating. I don't know much else about Rebecca Schiff. She published this book, which is full of short stories, very unusual writing style, and a lot of these short stories have been published in other places, magazines or journals, something like that. And I don't know what else Rebecca Schiff has been up to, as she hasn't had anything else published. And I did check out her Twitter too. She doesn't seem to have a lot of followers, and it seems like her last tweet was in March of 2020, which is especially worrying because that's when the pandemic started. So maybe she just went incognito for that period of time. Who is to say for sure? But maybe she'll publish some stuff down the road. That remains to be seen. So without further ado, let's talk about Phyllis. I will do a brief summary, a little bit of an analysis, and we will move on from there. So Phyllis focuses on the character of Phyllis. She is a grandmother in upstate New York, and as the story begins, she asserts that she does not intend to move anytime soon, at least until she dies. And the family, who has moved around quite a bit, decides to stay where they're at for the time being. She also works out quite a bit. She's commonly featured in her Gems newsletter as I guess she's an oddity of some sort because she's working out at her old age. As the story continues, the family begins drifting apart. People begin to die in the family, whether it be due to cancer or some sort of illness, organs failing, something like that. And Phyllis begins seeing her parents and her children dying, whereas she is continuing on with her life. Phyllis also begins to take on new jobs as a means of paying the bills, since some of her loved ones are dying. She goes from being a social worker to that of a therapist. She does start to lose touch with her family. She speaks in a rather matter-of-factly kind of tone, asserting that she knows and she's able to tell when people are going to die. So maybe that might be off-putting to some of the family members. It's really hard to tell. And at the same time, she's developing insomnia, which might be due to the fact that there's so much sadness in her life that she's unable to sleep or something is on her mind. She also begins to remember how her mother was a health nut, and as a response, she begins to eat only chocolate, which I don't know if that's going to help her or not, but that is what she is doing. And then at the end of the story, Phyllis dies, and there is an obituary in the Gem newsletter that she goes to frequently that talks about her indomitable spirit, and that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is a little bit to talk about, but this isn't a very long short story, and I feel like there's not a lot of substance to it. One thing that Schiff does focus on is the view from the end of your life. So we're sort of like, because of the way the story is told, we're on the outside looking in on Phyllis's life. And it does seem a bit sad, and it also seems like it's harder to relate to others, especially as you get older because of the cultural differences and the age gap. It does kind of seem like, according to the writing here, that Phyllis has a hard time relating to her grandchildren because one thing that she notes is different is cell phones. They're smaller now, and Phyllis doesn't really understand the technology that they're using, which is compared to what she originally videotaped the family with using Super 8 cameras, and how the children transferred that to digital. So there's been a great change over Phyllis's lifetime, and so not only is she losing people, but she's finding that it's harder and harder to really understand people. And the only way that she can, relate to anything is by, I guess, going to the gym, where she doesn't have to interact with people. She can just work out, and maybe because her mother was a health nut, that's how she can feel connected to her family in that way. Another interesting element of this story, as I've noted before, we're kind of on the outside looking in, and that's because the story is presented in documentary style, which I think I've encountered before from a number of writers, and it's always an interesting way to tell your story because it allows you to either cheat or say something about that documentary style. And so this is presented as though someone is describing Phyllis as she is on camera. Allow me to read you a quote from this. "A family filmed themselves, but only on vacation. The grandchildren have the Super 8 reels transferred to digital. They watch with their grandmother Phyllis. Everyone was always swimming, say the children. Grandma, you had a body. I was quite thin, says Phyllis. Phyllis isn't fat, just old. Phyllis lifts weight at a gym called Midtown. She is the oldest person at the gym. They feature her in the gym's newsletter, Alive. Midtown is not the real Midtown. The gym is in upstate New York, and so is Phyllis." And you can see the interesting way that Schiff tells her story here, because every single paragraph begins with, or almost every single paragraph begins with, Phyllis does this, Phyllis does that, Phyllis does such and such and such and such. And so really, connecting it back to the intro, it really seems like we're looking in on Phyllis's life through the lens of a documentary, or maybe one of the home videos that they made, which is not a perfect view of someone's life. Because as the question that was on my mind is is this truly Phyllis's experience? Because we're being told what Phyllis is happening and what she must be thinking. But is that truly what Phyllis is thinking? Is that what's going on in her life at that point in time? I want to say no. I don't think this is what Phyllis is going through. It's just someone looking in on her life and saying, well, this might be what she's dealing with. This might be how she's feeling about certain events. And sure, she might be sad about her loved ones dying and, maybe a bit proud about going to the gym and being featured in their newsletter. But that isn't the sum of her experiences. And I think a lot of assumptions are being made about Phyllis, especially as it's being presented to us. And so the end result is maybe, as we view old family videos, especially from people who aren't alive anymore, we're going to make a lot of assumptions about them, and we're going to presume stuff that might be the case about their life. And it's not like they can come in and say, hey, that's not true, this is actually the case. And to some degree, we're fictionalizing the lives of other people. Did Rebecca Schiff intend to go that far? I don't know. I think that's left up to the reader to reach that point. But I do think it's very interesting how Rebecca Schiff uses this documentary style. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Phyllis by Rebecca Schiff. A pretty fun short story. With an unusual writing style. Every single short story in this collection, The Bed Moved, has a very hard to get into writing style. And I don't want to say it's bad. I just want to say it's probably not for me. But I do think that, everyone likes different writing styles. So, go check this out. See if you can get into it. It might be worth reading. I do think that, if this were presented in a longer format, such as a novel, it might get somewhat tiring, but it would also be very different. And so it is kind of a shame that this is all Rebecca Schiff has written. I would like to see some of the other things that she has touched upon. Anyway, if you read this before, you simply want to comment on something that I said, do so below in the comments. I would love to hear from you again. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this collection and the short story and Rebecca Schiff. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and documentary style travels. Farewell.